I made the point to her saying Wuxia is dead, and then she responded with, "Was it ever alive?" I haven't made enough money off of that book to pay 1 month of rent. Hey everybody, Deathblade here with another Chinese fantasy novel FAQ, and today I am talking about something a little bit depressing. I don't know, do I sound depressed? As I was sitting here thinking about what I plan to talk about, all of a sudden I started feeling down, thinking, man, this sucks. But I've been planning to talk about this topic, so I'm going to forge ahead and I'm going to talk about it. Is Wuxia dead? I was talking about it on my Discord server recently. Incidentally, if you use Discord, feel free to jump onto my server and hang out with us. We're pretty chill and we have a variety of topics we talk about. In any case, I was talking with someone else on my Discord server about Wuxia and stuff. She is probably better at Mandarin than me, I guess. Also a non-Chinese person who studied Mandarin, learned to read, became immersed in the culture to some extent. Also a fan of similar kind of genres that I talk about on this channel. I think she's probably read a lot more Wuxia in Chinese than I have, probably in either language, I guess. But in any case, I made the point to her saying Wuxia is dead, and then she responded with, "Was it ever alive?" And I think that's probably a good point. And I'm going to elaborate on it in a second. Before getting into it, I do want to lay out at the beginning that what I'm talking about is Wuxia, the genre of Chinese fiction, traditional classic Wuxia. Nowadays, there are people who use Wuxia to describe all sorts of things, especially just Chinese fantasy style fiction. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the stuff you can get on wuxiaworld, because the vast majority of things you can get on wuxiaworld, they're not actually Wuxia. In any case, I'm talking about traditional Wuxia stuff, whether it was written decades ago or whether it is being written now. I'm talking about martial arts fiction that is, generally speaking, set in a historical Chinese setting and is sort of grounded in reality, maybe a smattering of magic here and there, but we're not talking about immortals flying around, going to different worlds and things like that. We're talking about relatively realistic martial arts, obviously with a little bit of a superhuman flair, but not xianxia, xuanhuan cultivation, not that kind of stuff. We're talking traditional wuxia. Now, what do I mean when I say that it's dead? Because obviously it's not dead in the sense that you can go out and get that kind of stuff all over the place. What I mean is commercially viable, I guess. Are there people out there who can make a living off of wuxia, or if not make a living, supplement their income to a large extent by writing wuxia stuff or being involved in producing wuxia related content? My supposition is that you cannot do that. Now, I'm going to go through a few historical things here in a minute. But first, I want to talk about my history as a translator. I'm going to go to this right here, which is Kung Fu by Giddens Co. I will admit that this, Kung Fu Giddens Co., is probably the one time in my career as a translator, whether it was before I started doing it to make a living or after, where I actually thought something that was wuxia would potentially bring me some kind of monetary benefit. Before translating Kung Fu by Giddens Co., I had translated a couple wuxia novels, and they were for fun, to improve my language ability. After doing that, I picked Kung Fu by Giddens Co. for two reasons. One is that at the time, there were quite a few people on the spcnet.tv forums, which is where I was posting my translations, that were asking for this. I hadn't even heard of it, but I heard a lot of people saying, "Oh, somebody needs to translate Kung Fu by Giddens Co." And I think people even specifically asked me to do it. That was one reason. Another reason is that at the time, there was a big budget movie being made based on this novel. The author, he's also a director, I guess, and he had a few successful movie adaptations of his novels. I believe that he either directed or produced or both or whatever before this. And so when I heard that there was a movie coming of this and that people wanted a translation, I thought, wow, maybe I should jump on board and translate it. And then who knows, maybe if the movie gets popular, I have a translation, maybe I could sell it to, Giddens Co. or whoever it is, or license it, or I don't know, whatever. Ultimately, that didn't work because the author got embroiled in a scandal. He was cheating on his girlfriend or something. I think that's what led to it. I don't really know. I'm not an expert on him or that scene. But point is, even after the trailer came out, nothing happened with that movie. And so nothing happened with my translation either. I did reach out to this author however I could, multiple different ways, hoping maybe I could license it or something. Nothing ever happened with that. This is basically the only time where, in my mind, I was thinking maybe I could make some money off of the Wuxia stuff. Later, I started translating I Shall Still the Heavens, which is not Wuxia, and none of the things that I translated after I started doing I Shall Still the Heavens were Wuxia specifically. And I did, make a living off of that and provided for my family off of that, but none of that was Wuxia. I want to go through a few of what I perceive to be the big successes, historically speaking, in terms of Wuxia, whether you're talking about commercially or just culturally, I guess you could say. And obviously it all starts with Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Now this was in 2000. I think most people agree that this is kind of what really kicked off the Wuxia craze. Before this movie, you could find Wuxia stuff. There's an old Jackie Chan movie, which is basically a Wuxia movie that's really, really weird. I have a podcast with Brendan Davis about there somewhere. I'll try to find a link and put it in the description. But in any case, this was really what caught a lot of people's attention. And as you can see down here, it won a bunch of awards and whatever. This is what did it for me, what did it for a lot of people. And even to this day, it came out in 2000 and right now it's 2022. 22 years later, there are still people who have heard of this movie. People who were born after the movie was made have heard of it and know at least of it. And this was really popular. Obviously, action figures, comic books, and everything. A couple years after Crouching Tiger was Hero. This came out in 2002. And this was another one that I think was pretty successful, and a lot of people have heard of it and like it. And this kicked off the Zhang Yimou trilogy of popular films, I guess. There was House of Flying Daggers. Curse of the Golden Flower came in 2006. So 2004, 2002, 2004, 2006. These were big things. Curse of the Golden Flower, it calls it Wuxia here. I think if you look it up in on the Chinese internet, it doesn't call it Wuxia because it's not really Wuxia. Jade Empire came after House of Flying Daggers, so this came out in 2005, and I wouldn't really call this Wuxia either, but it's probably about the closest you can get in terms of a Western-produced video game that was really popular, that a lot of people liked, and it has a lot of Wuxia elements. I had an Xbox, and I remember buying this game, and I don't think I actually beat the game. I vaguely remember playing through it, and I kind of liked it, but it was whatever, about halfway through, or I don't remember. To me, this is the stuff that sticks out in my mind as stuff that was so successful and popular that a lot of people know about it and everybody talks about it. Since that kind of craze in the early 2000s, nothing really has hit big in terms of Wuxia. Now, granted, there are TV shows, there are movies and whatnot that come from China or other countries in the East that make Wuxia type content, but nothing has really hit big in the West. And I'm mostly talking about the West here. I guess there could be an argument to be made regarding the success of Wuxia outside of Western countries, but I'm specifically talking about English and Western countries. I don't remember much after this that was really, really super popular that you could point to oh, wow, that's totally Wuxia. Now, of course, more than anything, I think literature and novels are something that we should think about when talking about Wuxia. Wuxia comes from novels to begin with, and eventually it came to be on the silver screen and on TV and whatnot, but it generally starts out as fiction, and a vast majority of the film stuff early on was adapted from fiction, and even some of the TV shows that some people might think are Wuxia, for example, the Untamed Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, which is not Wuxia, but it's close. That's also originally a story in novel form. But what about novels? Are there novels out there that are popular that are Wuxia? Go over to Amazon to see. Now, I know Amazon's not the end-all, be-all of everything. So I searched the Kindle store for Wuxia novel. Skipping past the sponsored results, we have a lit RPG novel. And then we have Heaven's Official Blessing, which I haven't read it, but my understanding based on the description and things I've heard is it's not Wuxia. The Warlock 2, I suspect it's not Wuxia. We have a novel here that has no ratings. Another lit RPG novel. Another not Wuxia. King of Weapons, another lit RPG with 1 rating or review. Another lit RPG, something that doesn't look like Wuxia at all. A sponsored one, lit RPG, none of which really look to be Wuxia as far as I can tell. Going down the list, we have a lot of stuff, none of which is really Wuxia. Lots of stuff that's maybe Eastern inspired, maybe some progression fantasy stuff. Nothing that seems particularly successful. The successful things, such as this novel, Pilgrim, I don't think it could be considered true wuxia stuff. So I mean, here I'm on the third page of the search results, and we finally are getting another Heaven's official blessing, and then down here is Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, but neither of those are wuxia. What are you talking about when you're talking about the most famous and best wuxia that is widely regarded as such? We're talking Jinyong. Of course, there is an official translation of it, Legend of the Condor Heroes, 4-book series. Now, I have my issues with this translation. I don't like it when there is an existing fan base and then some big company comes in, buys a license, and then says, screw the old fan base. We're going to make it better or do our own thing. And that's essentially kind of what happened, especially with the first one. And the first one set the stage for everything to come. That having been said, the average person is not going to know about those changes and probably will not care about them either. The biggest thing that I took issue with is how they changed a bunch of names of the characters. I mean, the people who are coming to this series without being fans before will not know anything about that. Look, it has 563 ratings and reviews. I mean, that's not bad. That is better than any novel that I've ever done. But when you look at really successful novel series on Amazon, that's not a very high number for a really successful novel series. And what's more, I think that it's obvious how well this novel series was received when you look at the subsequent translations. Book 2, 189. Book 3, a little bit more at 232. Book 4, 122 ratings and reviews. None of those are very amazing. And what's more, I think the most telling of all is let's click on A Bond Undone. And let's click on the look inside, which now this look inside will draw on the most updated version of the text that Amazon has. And I confirmed this by also downloading the book. So this is something that I thought was crazy and has not been changed. And incidentally, when did this come out? Scrolling down here, 2000, March 20. This almost to the day. This has been out for 2 years. Now look at this. Okay, Bond Undone. Let's skip past the intro part and go to the first line. I won. Giggling and triumphant, Lotus Huang headed for the doors. This is someone's name. It's not even capitalized. Oh, maybe it's not supposed to be capitalized. It's literally capitalized elsewhere in the chapter. The first line has a typo. Oh, maybe that's just, an unusual outlier. And, well, wait, what? Guojing, also a name, also not capitalized. It's capitalized right here. The fact that the publisher did not go to the trouble of doing the most basic level of proofreading, I think is very telling about this series. And I think, now this is just a theory, I have nothing to back this up, but I think basically what happened was the first book kind of flopped. And so, they had already purchased the license for the whole book and probably already arranged translation and whatever. And so they went ahead and translated the whole series. I think by the time the first one was released, the second one was already being translated. I forget. But they did ultimately publish the whole book, but obviously they pulled back their resources. And that is very, very telling to me. And so that's the end of my kind of rant. It's not like I have some secret evidence that is going to prove that wuxia is dead. But my overall feeling is that nowadays, there is no such thing as commercial viability for wuxia. There are other examples I could pull up, but I don't think people are interested in seeing a million examples. Historically speaking, based on what we have seen wuxia do, it's just not something that Western people are interested in general. Now, I know there are fans of wuxia. I am a fan of wuxia. I love it. For example, Righteous Blood, Ruthless Blades is a tabletop role-playing game that I spent years working on to try to provide a very authentic and respectful homage to the genre. And a lot of people liked it, and it sold okay. But I haven't made enough money off of that book to pay 1 month of rent. So it's not like it's some amazing bestseller. And I think across the board, whatever kind of medium you're talking about, I don't think anybody out there is really actually making a living off of wuxia or getting even close to that. Is it something that a lot of people kind of are interested in every once in a while? Yes. Are there people out there who are essentially hobbyists who are, making a little bit of money here and there on wuxia? Sure. And I'm not saying that, money is everything and that it's only successful if you're making money at it. But the sad fact remains that people cannot do creative things without making money off of it eventually. You can only go to a certain point of doing things for fun as a hobby and stuff. You can only produce so much of that before you have to move on to other things that will make money. Now, there are always going to be people who can do it on the side. You can go on Amazon right now and you can find wuxia novels that have, dozens of reviews or whatever. Like I have one. Legends of Ogre Gate is essentially a wuxia novel. I have an okay amount of reviews, and there are others that have even more reviews than I do that are traditional wuxia novels, but I guarantee you that nobody is quitting their day job to do that. All along, I had this, what I think is a mistaken opinion, that if only there could be a really good translation of wuxia, if only there could be a really well-written wuxia novel, if only there could be a really well-produced game or whatever it is, then finally larger audiences would see how cool wuxia is. I don't think that anymore. I think that no matter what effort gets put into it, there is not going to be a major commercial success. Now, I would love to be proven wrong, and I'm sure at some point I will be. I'm sure at some point there's going to be something that comes along, some novel or TV show or whatever, that smashes all the records and it's traditional wuxia. But I wouldn't bet on that. If you have a different opinion, please feel free to leave it in the comments below. I would love to hear it. That's it for this video. If you like the content I produce, please do like and subscribe and share. And please do leave a comment letting me know what you think. I will see you next time. Gautzala.